Welcome to Sea Level Rise, the Barabar Caves, Missing 411, and the Kardashev Civilization Scale. Here we go. In the same way that the parts, members, and organs of the human body are interconnected and that they mutually assist, reinforce, and influence each other, so too are the parts and members of this endless universe connected with and spiritually and materially influenced by one another. Abdul-Baha said that in some answered questions. I'm going to be very direct in this. There's about 4 things I want to cover listed in the title, and they are related. I believe climate change is real, and you may not. For me, I don't care why it might be changing. I really only care if it is changing. The aspect of that phenomenon, if it is real, that I follow most closely is sea level rise. If I am wrong, New Orleans is a great place to buy low-lying real estate. If I am right, Mardi Gras will someday pretty soon be celebrated upriver at Baton Rouge, and then Vicksburg, and later on Memphis, Tennessee. Sea level rise is measurable. If it is rising, then we will need to relocate a couple wastewater treatment plants, potable water treatment plants, a road, rail, docking facilities, an airport, and a dozen or so condominiums. And we will only need to do that several hundred times. Since we are smart humans, through our leaders and our own community activism, and out of concern for the future, as you know, we have all been taking the necessary steps to prepare for this upcoming inconvenience to everyone, right? No. Instead, let's just continue to hope I am wrong and keep calm and carry on until we can't. That is the plan as far as I can tell. My message, sea level rise, if real, will produce measurable data. Gifts to the Sabe people. In the last episode, I showed you a bit of glass on a fence post that disappeared. Oh, phone call. Okay, let's see. I think I was at Gifts to the Sabe people. I've replaced the blue glass that was on that post in the last episode with another bit of blue glass on the same post. Why? In part because it's measurable. I'll put some photos up. You can see what I did. Put it up yesterday, took another one this morning, was still there. So I also enjoy the interaction. We'll see what happens. Okay, the Barabar Caves. These are in India. Show you a photo of the documentary on them. Regarding megalithic architecture, these caves are my favorite item. There is a new documentary about them using the latest scientific devices, and they are real head scratchers because the geometry is so complex and so precise, and the construction is so masterful, and the surfaces are both so flat and smooth, and they are carved out of the interior of huge portions of granite bedrock, such that our best machines in 2024 cannot duplicate the finish, let alone reproduce a cave to such exacting standards from such a hard material. Yet, there they sit to be measured and studied. That is why modern science is all over them like ants on a sugar loaf, right? That is why they have been front page news ever since their discovery years ago and are a household name throughout the civilized world, right? No. If you haven't heard of this before, I recommend you watch this documentary, and I'll show you the photo as I said. You might like it. My point is, they are measurable. But they're also enigmas. Also, they contain information just because they exist and because they were built long ago. My opinion is they are before the Younger Dryas. If you haven't heard of that, I can recommend the documentary series Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix. I'll show you a photo of that. In 2024, despite emerging scientific data, the notion of a global cataclysm 12,600 years ago is, as you might expect, a controversial idea and is strongly opposed by some scientists, people. But the science behind it, the global cataclysm of the Younger Dryas, is quite measurable. The Baha'i writings say this: when a cycle comes to a close, a new one is inaugurated, and the previous cycle, on account of the momentous events which transpire, vanishes so entirely from memory as to leave behind no record or trace. Thus, as you are aware, we have no record of 20,000 years ago, even though we established before through rational arguments that life on this earth is very ancient, not 1 or 200,000 years or even 1 or 2 million years old. It is ancient indeed, and the records and traces of ancient times have been entirely obliterated. That's what Abdu'l-Baha said in some answered questions early in the 20th century. He's talking about universal cycles. I submitted my manuscript inside out to the review offices in both the US and Australia. And I'm not complaining about them. They have a job to do to make sure that people like me who are going to write about the writings do so in a respectful, accurate manner. The Australian review office commented that one should not endlessly contend with science. They quoted the following, quote, in a letter from 21 February 2016, the Universal House of Justice, in talking about personal interpretations of scientific findings and the meaning of sacred texts, unquote, stated, in their efforts to explore the ocean of Baha'u'llah's revelation, the House of Justice hopes that the friends, people like me, will guard against two extremes. The first is to simply dismiss the truths found in the revelation owing to a dogmatic attachment to materialistic interpretations of scientific findings. To dismiss the truths based on an attachment to scientific findings. I don't think I'm doing that. That's not what they're talking about. The second, they go on, is to assume that in every instance where one's personal understanding of the teachings conflicts with scientific findings, it is these findings that must change in future, for such a posture would place Baha'is in the position of constantly contending with science. And that is what the Australia Review Office of their National Spiritual Assembly is concerned about with me, I think. The U.S. Review Office, to whom I've also sent the manuscript, has not responded yet. Going on, both of these extremes are incompatible with the Baha'i principle of the harmony of science and religion. I give you that as nothing more than being completely transparent. I'm not sure what they mean, and whatever they mean, I follow it. So that's why I'm not bothering at this point to try to figure out how to publish that little manuscript I wrote. Who cares? This is me going on for you. They could be absolutely right, and I am too close to my own views to see it. Luckily, they don't care about YouTube. Only paper publishing, as far as I can tell. So by sharing my ideas here on YouTube, I am outside the parameters that they choose to review. They decide that for themselves. That's the way it is. Okay, cool. I don't feel that contending with science is at all what I'm doing. What I am saying is that given the emerging scientific data, from Raytheon gun cameras to congressional hearings to an emerging worldwide oral history via thousands of eyewitnesses, and as an attorney, I could win my case with this many witnesses, sightings that go back to every First Nations tribe that we know of, the writings seem to back up that particular science, given that within science there are competing points of view, i.e., some scientists, a bunch of individual scientists, seem to be defending their own funding, influence, think funding, and fame, as in they're published, think funding. And those in opposition tend to follow, in opposition to what I'm suggesting here, tend to follow a self-created dogma rather than emerging scientific data, which they should at least look at scientifically rather than monetarily. And that's a point that is also stated by Graham Hancock and others who are, Graham Hancock's not a scientist, he's an investigative reporter, and he's always said that. That's what he's doing. For instance, there is no archaeology being done in the Sahara, etc. There's no money to be made in the Sahara. It costs money, nobody will send them there. So it's not about the science, it's about getting the money to do the research. And so they're saying, no need to look there, it's a desert. And when it was finally done in the Amazon, and people used to say there's no need to look there, because we know people came across the land bridge into North America. Once they checked the Amazon, the books were quickly rewritten by the scientific data proving the existence of hundreds of stone structures the scientific community told us for decades could not be there. But thanks to FLIR, now we all know that that stuff is there. Dave Politis, Missing 411, The Hunted. I followed Dave because he is an experienced cop and he only investigates missing person cases where there is no foul play involved and other criteria that he has figured out. If you haven't heard of him, I recommend watching him, and you can find him free on YouTube, it turns out. I'll put up the photo of what it looks like on Netflix. Missing 411, The Hunted is on Netflix, but I found it on YouTube for free. Netflix is currently, it's for rent. In his cases, the search and rescue, police, fire, first responders, searchers, dog teams, drones, helicopters, FLIR, everything. Search for days, find nothing. Sometimes they never find anything. And then later, after the search has been over for months, the skeleton of the missing person will turn up in an area searched multiple times by everybody. I like his phenomena because there is no question that it happened. Science just doesn't have any clues as to how it happened. And that is why science, government agencies, the Park Service, all the national police and sheriff's associations are all over this issue. In our national parks, state parks, and even our cities, right? No, they aren't. Why? Well, you decide. Their lack of interest is measurable, and the fact that these people have gone missing is measurable. I recommend you watch the documentary 411 The Hunted. You can probably find it for free, as I said, on YouTube. And then when you go out, be sure if you go hiking anywhere, get a personal locator beacon and just be more aware of your surroundings. If you haven't heard of that, you got to look into that. It's disconcerting. All right, which brings me to the Kardashev civilization scale. Kardashev is obviously from Jersey. That's a dad joke. No, actually, he's Russian, and his scale concerning the levels of advanced civilizations has led to the recent scientific postulation that, and here's the headline, at least 7 stars in our galaxy have the potential to harbor advanced alien technology, researchers find. That's the headline. And the article goes on to hypothesize that super advanced civilizations may have built Dyson spheres around their stars to capture more star energy. You can go look all that stuff up. It's not relevant to the point I'm trying to make here. Using the factors in his scale, only type 2 or type 3 civilizations could do this. Earth is considered a type 0 civilization because we extract our energy, information, and raw materials from organic-based sources and live with an extreme risk of extinction, at least compared to upper echelon civilizations. We also have war, pestilence, famine, etc., and death on horseback. To improve our situation, we need to become a type 1 civilization. That is, a planetary civilization. In the Baha'i writings, type 1 civilizations sound a bit like something called the lesser peace. And if you go to baha'i.org/library, you can always find it in the, on the print part of these videos. There's a lot to say about it. It's a process. It's a long-term thing. Don't be afraid of it. It will take a long time to get here. But we just need to worry about surviving until it does. The writings offer insight into this process. They say this, quote, "The unity of nations can quite properly be regarded as one stage, and indeed a highly significant step, in the lengthy process of the establishment of the lesser peace." Abdu'l-Baha linked the idea of unity of nations to the 20th century. So he may not have been referring to anything official or superficial, but apparently to the underlying foundations or various and measurable, think geopolitical, population decline, interconnecting of economies, etc., data. The Universal House of Justice continues. This is from a House of Justice letter. Quote, "However, attainment of the unity of nations should not be regarded as being synonymous with the establishment of the lesser peace." In answer to a question about the timing of the lesser peace, Shoghi Effendi stated in a letter written on his behalf in 1946 that, quote, "All we know is that the lesser peace and the most great peace will come. Their exact dates we do not know. Nevertheless, the unity of nations can quite properly be regarded as one stage, and indeed a highly significant step in the lengthy process of the establishment of the lesser peace." Universal House of Justice, 19th of April, 2001. I have written in a proposed article for the MUFON Journal, now at the U.S. Review Office, as follows. I would suppose that you are aware that many people have a knee-jerk reaction to the mention of a world government. You may as well. It has been the much maligned subject of many post-apocalyptic thrillers, and is often viewed with deep suspicion. And well, it should be, if it comes as the conclusion of a monopoly game. But a world government is part and parcel of the description of a type 1 civilization per the, let me get back to the fellow's name, Kardashev scale. Part and parcel. I just lost my place. That is the definition of planetary. You can't get there without unity. My point? Quote, the parts and members of this endless universe are connected with and spiritually and materially influenced by one another. Everything I have just talked about is connected, probably through the measurable data that we can currently find, not to mention the scientific data yet to come. Am I contending with science? Only if the science mentioned is also contending with science. I am not arguing against any data, only dogma, and there's not supposed to be any dogma in science. I leave you with this from the writings. Most of you are probably not Baha'is and follow some other ideas, so don't be turned off by the Baha'i perspective of the quote, but consider the inescapable reassurance that it offers regarding Earth becoming, at some point, a Type 1 civilization. Quote, today, the Lord of hosts is the defender of the covenant. The forces of the kingdom protect it. Heavenly souls tender their services, and heavenly angels promulgate and spread it broadcast. If it is considered with insight, it will be seen that all the forces of the universe, in the last analysis, serve the covenant. Those are from selections from the writings of Abdu'l-Baha, page 228. So that's what I leave you with. And again, I have friends who are agnostic and atheist and belong to all the other faiths beyond Baha'i. And so whatever you think, whether it's God or spiritualism or tribalism or science or whatever it was that created this universe in which we find ourselves, that brought us to this point, that is what we're referring to when we talk about the covenant of God, whatever he is, because in these Baha'i writings, God is unknowable. And it gets complicated, but that's why we have, in this faith, we feel we have the messengers to bring this unknowable essence to us in a manner that we can make some kind of sense of. And science is part of that. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed this. If you get bored, take a look at some of those documentaries that I have put on the screen for you. I think you might find them interesting. See you next time. Bye.
It is. Yay! Did it.